Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 19th, 2024 Site Plan Review Committee subgroup meeting for the Melwood project. So if you haven't been to one of these before, I think we have some new folks here tonight. So what I'm going to do is I have some wonderful prepared remarks. We're going to do introductions. I'll go over and then I'll go over the agenda for the evening. And then I'll give my colleague, Commissioner Jim Lantelmi, an opportunity if he's got anything he wants to add. So tonight we will be holding a hybrid public meeting, which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia for the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy adopted on July 7, 2022. Members of the SPRC group for the Melwood project are participating both here in person and virtually through electronic means. At this time, I'd like to orient everyone to our hybrid environment. So members of the public may attend the meeting here in person, electronically, or by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the SPRC webpage, the project webpage, the county's events calendar, and the email notification that was sent to SPRC email subscribers. Additionally, there's a dial-in phone option for anyone who wants to use it. For SPRC group members joining virtually, if you lose internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon. Turn off sound to any devices around you to minimize interference. And I will add, if you're at the table, please keep your cell phones in your pockets or bags. They're known to interfere with our equipment, so please do so. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed, and we'll address when it's appropriate to turn it on. The meeting chat in Microsoft Teams is active to serve two purposes: for SPRC subgroup members who need technical assistance, and for members of the public to add their names to the list for public comment, which we will take at the end of the meeting. The Microsoft Teams chat should not be used for discussion. Those who are planning to provide public comment will still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as for that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the recording we're taking during the assigned public comment period. If SPRC group members participating virtually wish to be recognized to speak on an item, please turn on your video feed and raise your virtual hand, and I will monitor the video feed as an indicator for those who would like to speak. If you're joining by phone today without the video option, please announce your name and group that you're representing, and I will make sure, or Commissioner Lantelmi will remind me to check in with you to make sure that you're recognized if you do not have the video option. Okay, so we're going to talk about public comment. For members of the public who would like to provide feedback and comment, you'll be called upon to speak at the end of the meeting, and I will make best efforts to let you know as we get towards the end of the meeting how much public comment we can accommodate. We'll make sure to accommodate everyone who wants to make public comment. The length of time will depend upon, I suppose, the length of our conversation here. If you wish to speak, please enter your name in the meeting chat. So if you're virtual, please do this. Or provide staff in person your name, and you'll be added to the speakers list. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. Okay, we got through it. Great. So again, my name is Eric Berkey. I'm a member of the Planning Commission, and I am chairing this SPRC for the Melwood project. I'm joined here by my colleague, Planning Commissioner Jim Lantelmi. Before we get to introductions, I think there was one thing that Commissioner Lantelmi wanted to address.
Yeah, and as Eric mentioned, since we do have some new people here, and this is a site plan review committee meeting, what is an SPRC? What are we looking to do here? Why are we doing this? This is an opportunity for the various stakeholder representatives, and we tried to reach all this, have somebody from each of the stakeholders for this particular project have a representative here. It's an opportunity to hear from both the applicant and from the county staff about this project, and then we all are able to react to it. It is not a hearing. We do not take votes. We do not make recommendations. What we do here is try to identify issues. And do we have a consensus on that issue, or do we not have a consensus on that issue? We will then report that, Eric and I, to the larger planning commission. We have other commissions at the table here, either virtually or in person. They, of course, will go back to their commissions and discuss this. This is an opportunity also for the other planning commissioners to be able to speak in a public forum so you can hear what our questions and issues are. So that is what an SPRC is. And that's why we are here tonight. And we were here about a couple months ago for the first one. So the next step after SPRC is this will then go to, if not other commissions, it will end up at the Planning Commission, which is also public, where public comment is allowed and encouraged, where it will be discussed among all the planning commissioners. And then it is a hearing. We will in fact take a vote then and we'll make a recommendation to the county board. So that's why we're here and what we're doing. Thank you.
Well put. And one other thing that I would add to your addition would be if there's someone in the group who makes a comment that you agree with, there's nothing wrong with saying, I would like to align myself with Commissioner or Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and then obviously provide any additional comments that you may or may not have. Okay, so at this time, we're going to go around the table as well as the virtual table, and then we will get into the agenda. So again, I introduced myself and Commissioner Lantelmi. So I'm going to start, Mr. Matusik got up. I'm going to start with Mr. Theo, and then if we could go around the table here and introduce, give your name, and then the organization for which you're representing tonight. Actually, we're going to go with Commissioner Peterson. If you could tell us your name and who you're representing tonight.
Hi, Tenley Peterson, Planning Commission.
Adam Theo, Transportation Commission.
John Steele, Arlington Ridge Association.
Hi, Pam Van Hine, Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Steve Stockwell, Forestry and Natural Resources Committee.
Daniel Weir, Planning Commission.
Bryce Johnson with the Department of Environmental Services.
Kevin Lamb with the Planning Division.
Kathy Puskar on behalf of Melwood and Wesley Housing.
Leah Bagley, Planning Commission.
Cindy Lewin, Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission.
Reverend Amy Beth Coleman from Calvary United Methodist.
Stacy Meyer, Aurora Highlands Civic Association.
Eric Castle, Crystal City Civic Association.
Thank you. And then let's go online. If any subgroup members online.
Karen Guevara, Planning Commission.
Thank you, Karen.
And I think we have a representative from the Housing Commission online.
Yes, hi, Zach Lennick, Housing Commission. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well, thank you everybody for attending tonight. All right, so I'm going to go over the agenda very briefly, as you should know, and then we're going to start with, I guess we're going to do the applicant presentation first. Let's do staff first. Okay, there we go. So tonight we're going to be doing some project updates. We're going to be talking about transportation, open space and landscaping, and then green building and sustainability are our topics. So what we're going to do tonight, format-wise, is similar to last time, which is we're going to go around the table. I will start with different folks to kind of change it up. If you have comments or questions, provide those at this time. If you'd like to align yourself or maybe even disagree with comments or questions from another group member, you may do so as well. And then if we have time at the end, we'll do concluding remarks if there are things that we haven't covered, and with mindful for the fact that we do want to provide opportunity for public comment. So that being said, I think my agenda at this point is done, and I'm going to turn it over to staff for their presentation.
All right. So good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Kevin Lamb with the Planning Division. I'm also joined by Bryce Johnson with DES Transportation. And tonight we'll be providing a presentation on behalf of staff for the Melwood project. So tonight's agenda, I'll first provide a brief project overview, followed by an overview of the policy guidance. I'll then launch into the SPRC discussion topics for tonight, which are listed here on the screen. And then go into kind of the next steps in the process. So here's an aerial view of the site. The 1.9 acre site is located at 750 23rd Street South in the Aurora Highlands neighborhood. So it consists of two parcels. The first parcel A is currently occupied by Melwood, which is housed in the former Nellie Custis School building, as well as its associated surface parking area. And then we have parcel B, which consists of a portion of Nellie Custis Park. Although the applicant owns parcel B, it has a public park and open space easement over it, and the applicant is not proposing any improvements to this parcel. So the applicant is requesting a rezoning to RA 818, multiple family dwelling district for the entire site. They are also requesting a GLUP change to low medium residential for parcel A only, while parcel B remains public GLUP designation. So then in terms of kind of the policy guidance, we can again look to the Melwood GLUP study document, which provides specific guidance for redevelopment pursuant to various topics. So pertinent to tonight's discussion topics will mainly be focused on the transportation and environment recommendations. So under transportation, recommendations include improving sidewalks and streetscapes to meet county standards, considering upgrading nearby crosswalks and bus stops, locating parking underground with parking and loading entrances appropriately screened, and conducting a multimodal traffic assessment to study potential traffic and parking impacts. And then in terms of the environment, encourage participation in the county's Green Building Incentive Program, prioritizing biophilia, sustainability, and meeting a tree canopy coverage goal of 25%. To the extent possible, conserving existing mature trees, providing a vegetated green buffer with the park and adjacent properties, and then finally employing best stormwater management practices. So with that in mind and launching into the topics for tonight, first up is project updates. I will let the applicant go through these in more detail, but I did want to highlight one main update, which is that the main building entrance shown in the red arrow is now located here where the historic interpretation of the school facade is. And this also results in the ground floor uses being flipped so that the Melwood space is now on the western side of the ground floor. All right, so Bryce.
You can just hand me that. Oh, that works. So again, my name is Bryce Johnson with the Department of Environmental Services. I'll cover the transportation section for this. So this location is served by a variety of transportation options, including bus stops spaced a block apart along 23rd Street South, nearby metro stations, and a bike stair station on South Hayes Street to the west. The MTP designates the adjacent segment of 23rd Street South as a Type E arterial road, which is planned to contain 2 to 4 travel lanes, no restrictions on driveway access, medium on-street parking priority, a 4 to 6 foot wide landscape strip, and a 5 to 6 foot wide sidewalk. The MTP designates the adjacent segment of South Grant Street to be a neighborhood local street, which is planned to contain either a yield street condition or 2 travel lanes, no restrictions on driveway access, a 2 to 4 foot wide landscape strip, and a 4 to 6 foot wide sidewalk. Here are the proposed site conditions, showing again what Kevin was just showing, but this time really focusing on the site access. The applicant proposes to utilize an existing driveway entrance on 23rd Street South for the proposed underground garage entrance. For loading and trash, the applicant proposes a separate entrance from South Grant Street, shown in the orangish yellow on the screen. For bicycle parking, the applicant proposes 2 bicycle storage rooms, one located in the underground garage and one located on the ground floor with access from 23rd Street South. Based on prior feedback from Metro regarding the 2025 Better Bus Network, the current plans show the removal of an existing Metro bus stop at the intersection of 23rd Street South and South Grant Street. However, the final approved bus network does show the retention of that bus stop So staff is coordinating with Metro and the applicant to ensure the plans are consistent with the new bus network to launch in summer 2025. If the bus stop were to be removed, the site would retain access to nearby bus stops located within a 3-minute walk to the east and west. Here we'll move on to the parking and loading. The applicant proposes a total of 93 parking spaces with the submission that was submitted earlier this month. This includes 73 residential parking spaces and 20 parking spaces for Melwood. The applicant is requesting a reduced residential parking ratio of about 0.69 spaces per unit. The parking spaces are all located in the below grade parking level at the garage, access from 23rd Street South, as I mentioned before. The building does include a single loading space access from South Grant Street, which will serve both residents and Melwood. The applicant also proposes a total of 53 bicycle spaces, including the 47 secure spaces I mentioned before, as well as 6 street spaces located outside. Next, we'll review 23rd Street South. These slides show 2 cross sections of the proposed street conditions. The applicant proposes to maintain an approximate street width of 60 feet. On the street, the applicant proposes 3 additional parking spaces, a passenger loading zone, and 3 short-term parking spaces. The passenger loading zone would be located at the main building entrance, as Kevin mentioned before, with the short-term parking located to the right or east of that entrance. For the streetscape, the applicant is increasing the landscape strip from 4.5 feet to 5 feet in width, and the sidewalk from 5 to 6 feet. The top right image shows the typical street cross sections facing west, with the property on the left. The increased streetscape features are shown in bold. The bottom right image shows the cross section where a passenger loading zone is proposed at the main building entrance. Instead of the landscape strip here, there will instead be an access aisle with an associated curb ramp connecting to the sidewalk. Next, we'll move on to South Grant Street. This is again, in this instance, facing north. The applicant proposes to widen the majority of the site's frontage with South Grant Street in order to accommodate a required aerial access fire lane within the travelway. This is a minimum 26 feet. This new street section will increase from being 24 feet wide total to 34 feet wide in total, including 2 travel lanes instead of a yield street condition, and remove the Sunday-only parking currently provided. On-street parking will, however, be provided along the property's frontage with a curb inset created by the street widening. The image on the right shows the new street conditions, consisting of a 13-foot wide northbound travel lane, 14-foot wide southbound travel lane, and 7-foot wide parking lane. For the streetscape, the applicant proposes a 6-foot wide landscape strip, 5-foot wide landscape strip, and 6-foot wide sidewalk matching that provided along 23rd Street South. The street and streetscape to the south of the site will retain their existing conditions.
Great. So moving on to open space and landscaping. So along the 23rd Street frontage, the applicant proposes new trees and landscaping within the building setback. The applicant also proposes a vegetated buffer with Nellie Custis Park to the south. So overall, around 47 trees are proposed to be removed and replaced per the county's tree replacement standards. There will be 63 new trees planted on parcel A for a tree canopy coverage of around 22% just on parcel A. There are also 8 trees being conserved on parcel B, which remains as part of Nellie Custis Park and would bring the total tree canopy coverage parcel A plus B to around 27%. So the applicant proposes to achieve a National Green Building Standard Silver certification, which is an eligible green building rating system per the state's affordable housing funding applications. So this is in lieu of the LEED or Earthcraft multifamily rating systems we typically review at the county. So while the applicant is not currently seeking additional density under the county's Green Building Incentive Program, they are pursuing additional certifications such as those listed here. And then lastly, the project will be providing Energy Star appliances and WaterSense fixtures. So in terms of community engagement, staff held an online engagement opportunity, which garnered 219 participants and over 1,100 comments. So in terms of tonight's SPRC discussion topics, the feedback was that many feel the proposal will significantly impact traffic and on-street parking availability on surrounding streets. While some believe the amount of parking being provided is appropriate, given the proposed use and nearby transit options, many feel it is insufficient. Many also expressed strong dissatisfaction about the removal of existing trees and green space, especially in that northeast corner. And while some support the pursuit of NGSB silver certification, others advocate for higher green building standards such as LEED Gold or higher. So a summary of responses has been posted to the project webpage, which goes into more depth for each of the topic areas. So tonight's SPRC meeting will be followed by various commission meetings in the new year, including the Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board as an informational item. The public review process will then move toward the county board meeting in the February timeframe. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think it's time for the applicant presentation.
Thank you. Once again, Kathy Puskar with Walsh Colucci, and I'm here on behalf of Melwood and Wesley Housing. And we have been busy since our last site plan review committee meeting. We got a lot of great feedback at the last meeting, and we have balanced all of the feedback we've gotten, and hopefully you'll see the improvements that we've made this evening. We also reached out to and met with the Arlington Ridge Civic Association and Aurora Highlands. However, we have not been able to get our schedules coordinated with Aurora Highlands yet. So we have not met with them again, but look forward to doing so if there is a mutually agreeable date. Quickly, I'm just going to touch on the big picture changes. The left is the previous, the right is current. The biggest one, and I think there were a lot of comments to this effect, was the relocation of that main entrance to the east, where we have the interpretation of the historic facade. And when we get to the architecture, you're going to see some changes that are in direct response to comments we received about certain things that could be done to improve the look of that facade. And it's really come a long way. You'll see improvements to the streetscape along 23rd Street and Grant Street. You'll also see, as we go around to the back, the relocation of the transformers farther away from the park. That was a big topic of discussion with additional landscaping in that area. And then there was also a concern about the extent of that second level courtyard and how close it came to the park. Our changes have allowed us to push back that second story to get it farther away from the park, and also creating a patio at that first level. In terms of the landscaping, I think Mr. Lamb went over a lot of what we've done, but suffice it to say, we have ground cover, evergreen trees, ornamental trees, shade trees. We've broken up that patio, as I mentioned, and you'll see trees and shrubs and bioretention planters on those courtyards and patios. You'll also note on that first floor patio, we have a horticultural therapy beds for the Melwood patrons to use. And we also have a water feature on that second level courtyard. You will see green roofs also on that plan. The other thing you'll notice is that we used to have kind of a hardscape patio on the front of the building at that main historic facade. And there was concern about whether that was kind of looking too privatized and not replicating or referencing kind of the landscaping and green space that historically has existed there. And so if we go to the next page, you'll see that by flipping our uses within the building, you'll see that the blue is Melwood. It's now located on the western half of the property and the residential's on the right. We now have that main entrance, but the great thing about it is that hardscape patio that we wanted for the use of Melwood has now moved to the southwest corner at the first floor. So they have direct access to a patio where they have those planting beds and seating, and can have some outdoor space for their use. The other thing you can see on this page is the prior location of those transformers, about 12 feet from the property line, are now almost 22 feet from the property line. We moved them as far back as we could while maintaining the requirements from distance from the building. And then on the next page, this is a better kind of exhibit to show you how that second floor has pushed back. And so it is pushed back an additional 37 feet 9 inches from the building front where it stood before. And that provides additional relief in the massing. It provides additional relief in that courtyard not being kind of looking over the park directly. And as I showed you on the previous page, we've added landscaping there. I'm going to quickly turn it to Karen, who's going to talk about the streetscape.
Okay, here you go. You see a blow up of that street section on 23rd Street that we were talking about earlier. So as you can see, we shifted the drop off, the passenger loading area adjacent to the new entrance, the new main entrance. So it shifted there. You'll notice that we also have shifted the bike racks. There are 3 bike racks along the streetscape that have shifted closer to the main entrance as well. And what we've done here is we now have a consistent 5-foot landscape strip and 6-foot sidewalk running east-west along the front of the property. Again, the passenger loading area is a curbless area, so the sidewalk does come down to meet that area, so someone could get dropped off and have a flush condition all the way to the front door of the building. Moving towards the corner, we are showing the bus stop. In this scenario, in this image here, we are showing a new landing pad, an ADA accessible landing pad. So if the bus stop does stay, we're ready for it here. The next slide. Here is Grant Street. Again, what was discussed earlier today, it is 17-foot wide Yield Street. And due to the fire marshal requirements, we are increasing that to 26 feet wide with the 7-foot parking lane now on the west side of the street. Another comment that we addressed was on the previous design, the transition to the original, to the existing curb was south of our driveway entrance along Grant, and now the bump in is only between the corner and our entrance, and then we shift back to meet existing, so there are no changes in front of the park along the street frontage. Now, Doug, talk about.
Okay, the next slide, north elevation, and so architecture quickly. You can see from the top, the major change on the ground floor is we've moved the entrance to the east. It is now right in the recess that we've created for the historic evocation of the Nellie Custis School. We have organized the windows as we were discussing at the last meeting. And then as we go around to the next slide, which is the we're going to the historic evocation. And so you can see at the top is the previous design, and at the bottom, really a story and a half tall now. We've raised the wall height, and we have echoed the original Nellie Custis entrance with an echo of the Nellie Custis canopy over the door. You'll see in a second that we've picked up the details from that, and the fenestration there is very evocative of the original architecture of the Nellie Custis School. So a little better perspective, I think, with these photoreal perspectives. And so you can see on the left, the previous, on the right, the new proposed, and you can see the windows. We've created that 1.5-story look of the Nellie Custis School. So if we move around then to the next one, that's a closer view of that main entrance, showing the canopy, showing the articulation, showing the detail that we're picking up from the original school architecture. And you can see that original in the top left-hand corner. So keeping moving around onto the east elevation, the major difference you'll see here is we've lightened the color scheme, and we are also now seeing the result from the flip, moving the Wesley housing to the east. And so you see the windows now have changed from office windows to much more residential. And so we've simplified and cleaned up the roofscape. And so now around to the south elevation. And here, I think probably, again, you see the change to the residential windows on the bottom. I think the significant here element here is to the west. And you see, I think, quite dramatically, the drop in the patio that we now have created in front of what is the Melwood space. And you see the Melwood office windows at the back of that 1-story patio. Going around to the west is really probably the least changed, but we've actually simplified the roofscape and simplified the color scheme somewhat. And you can see on this west elevation that one-story drop to the patio. Just to look quickly around the building, you'll see perspectives. And so these you have seen before, and you can see the difference, I think, there with the increase in height of the historic evocation of Nellie Custis. Moving around to Grand Street and you're just keeping rolling here, I think we can move on quickly around down to Grant Street and then around the south, looking across the Nellie Custis Park. And I think one last perspective is really the one that shows how that quite dramatic drop in the patio is, so that we have much less of an imposition on the Nellie Custis Park. And so over to Felice for some transportation.
Thanks, Doug. I think we've covered a lot of the transportation elements already, but so I'll run through these quickly. Just wanted to give a transportation overview of the site. As Bryce mentioned, it's within about 0.6 to 0.8 miles of 2 metro stations. There are on-street bicycle routes along 23rd and South Fern, bike lanes along East Street in the vicinity, several bus stops in the area, and as Bryce mentioned, the area is undergoing a Better Bus Network initiative, which is looking to consolidate some of the bus stops in the area. Again, site access is shown here. I just wanted to highlight that one curb cut is being removed along 23rd Street. Separate loading access is over along Grant Street, and then parking access will remain on 23rd Street, where the pedestrian volumes are lower than Grant Street. And then again, this just shows the bicycle parking. At the ground floor, the exterior bike racks have been moved closer to the entrance, and there's a ground floor bike room. You can see how you can access that room from both 23rd and Grant Street. And then again, in the garage, there's an additional bike room that you access via the parking ramp. For vehicular parking, again, we've got one level of below-grade parking with 20 spaces provided for Melwood. And then actually the plans have been evolving a bit. So we actually have 75 spaces now for the residential, which brings the ratio, to 0.71 spaces per unit. And we do find that that's in line with other residential parking ratios for comparable affordable projects. So some of those are shown here. There's a column in the middle that shows the supply from some of those sites at a 0.82, but then really what we are focused on is the demand ratio that actually shows parking occupancy at a 0.61, which is comparable to our 0.71. This just shows the curbside management, so the on-street parking on both 23rd and Grant, existing on the left and then proposed on the right. And so we've touched on this, but it does show the 4 spaces on Grant Street moving from the east side of Grant over to the west side. And then on Sunday, as we've discussed, there is currently the on-street parking on the west side of Grant that's being removed in some sections. And then the 4 spaces have been moved over to that side to provide that wider section of Grant for fire access. And then finally, the site will, of course, comply with the transportation management plan elements that are typical for a site, including participation in funding, coordination with ACCS and ATP membership, and the typical elements of the TMP plan. And then for the parking management plan, the garage will be access controlled for Melwood and for the residents. There will be some shared parking. The garage will be managed to allow visitors to use the Melwood parking spaces as determined by Melwood depending on their operating hours. And then of course, the garage will include EV and ADA parking spaces. I'll turn it to Kathy.
And finally, to touch on the sustainability, as was mentioned, we're not utilizing the county's Green Building Incentive Program, as all of our bonus density is being earned by our proposed affordable housing building. That being said, we are committing to the National Green Building Standard Silver certification, which is equivalent to LEED Gold. We are pursuing Zero Energy Ready Home certification. It makes the project more competitive and we hope to achieve it, but I have to put a little caveat that that is contingent on being awarded certain financing to be able to pay for that, but it is our goal. Our key sustainability measures include an all-electric building, an energy score of 75, water sense features and Energy Star appliances, fresh air ventilation and EPA Indoor Air Plus certification, high performance windows and insulation, and a minimum of 4% EV parking, although we hope that will be higher too. I did want to touch on the tree canopy. Well, first I wanted to say, if you looked at these plans online, They have been evolving. There have been tweaks. We noticed kind of we had different images pointing to the wrong things. We had the bike racks in the wrong location. So we have made some updates to this presentation, and we've provided that to staff, and they'll put that up online. So if you see something that looks a little bit different than what you saw last week, it's because we've been working feverishly to make sure that it's accurate. To that extent, the canopy on parcel A is currently at 22.67, so almost 23%. And once again, if you take into account that Melwood also owns the adjacent parcel B, granted it is in an easement for public open space, the totality of the tree canopy between those two parcels is just over 28%, which is 28.3%. I just wanted to highlight again the parking. I know that staff had previously seen an iteration that had 2 spaces less. We now are back to where we were before with the 95 spaces and the 0.71. So I hope you'll see that we tried, we listened at the last meeting, we've taken that feedback, and I hope you'll agree that the project continues to advance in a right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Puskar. Okay, so the matter is now with the committee. Okay, so we've got 4 topics that we're going to discuss tonight. Project updates, transportation, open space and landscaping, and then green building and sustainability. So we'll start with project updates. And so again, we're going to go around the table and then virtually as well. And so since I started over here for introductions, I'm going to start over here for comment. And so we'll start with Mr. Castle. And then if folks have comments, just turn your light on, once your neighbor is done, and then we'll get to the next topic. So Mr. Castle, go ahead.
Thank you. Did you change anything dealing with packages? And so that would be my number 1 question, because I still think you don't have enough space for FedEx, all the deliveries, that type of thing.
So if we can go to the slide where we show the streetscape, we have the pickup drop-off area that's about 42 feet in length, plus an additional pickup drop-off space that's right in front of the main entrance. And so that 42-foot passenger zone plus the additional space creates 3 short-term drop-off pickup spaces for packages and deliveries to come in and out of the building.
So you added 1 space? Is that the way to think about it?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any idea, have you done any studies at all on how many packages and how much delivery stuff you're expecting?
I think Melwood probably knows how many packages they get. I'm looking for Scott. How many,
Okay.
About once a week for Melwood. And then I'm assuming that the residents would get whatever is typical for 105 residential units.
Okay. And then just one, should I make comments now or wait for comments?
No, right now is great.
I do like the switching the design of the entrance. I would suggest a slightly bigger canopy though. The canopy seems kind of small for that area, and I think you'd look better if you had a bigger canopy. That would be my 1 comment. But I do like the new design is much better. And one last question: do you have pets? Does residents have pets?
Only as required by ADA.
Okay, so pets without ADA are not allowed.
Correct.
Okay.
Hi, Stacy Meyer from Aurora Highlands. As far as the updates, we went through it extensively, and some residents and zoning committee went through the November presentation. Unfortunately, the one that just dropped was only a day or 2 ago. It's been a very fast week, and we really haven't had a chance to look through that. I will say that the scope of the changes that we were expecting and we'd like to see are nowhere near what we'd like, what we're seeing in this presentation. We have sent a letter to the SPRC yesterday afternoon, and the ones that were listed in the online, and to the Planning Commission. with our comments and extensive recommendations for changes that would make this project appropriate, including protecting the park, including providing adequate parking ratios, including providing adequate parking on street and for the ambulance that comes to the urgent care next door, including the precedent of height, which is completely out of proportion. All these things that we've been talking about that we have problems with this project, none of it really has been addressed. So our comments were posted by, I think it was staff, is that right, Kevin? Onto the project website, and we would like to encourage that the Planning Commission and the SPRC members please read what we wrote and the ideas that we have, including the ones we presented a month ago. We think this project is going to be a real problem in terms of the neighborhood, in terms of traffic, in terms of density, and in terms of traffic and parking.
Reverend Coleman, any questions or comments?
Thank you. A question that I have is the loading dock. How often will that be used? Like the amount of trucks coming through there? Because we have a preschool right there.
Right. So that loading dock, it does have a roll down door and it's for move in, move outs, and trash pickup. So
Okay.
it's not going to be that frequently, you know, I mean, obviously as people move in the beginning, it'll be used a lot because we have 105 units, assuming it gets approved. But other than that, it says people move in and move out, or I guess if someone got some furniture delivered, but it's not anticipated to be intensive. Melwood gets most of their packages through FedEx deliveries and Amazon. So those trucks would just park in the loading space out front.
Okay.
And then trash pickup would occur from that enclosed loading area.
Excellent. My other question, can you go through the Sunday parking? Because I know this is critical for.
Sure. Can we pull up that exhibit again? I think it's Felice's exhibit. Okay. So this shows that on the west side of the street right now, 11 spaces are available or utilized on Sundays for parking.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see in the new parking, you will, let's see, it'll be, I think it's 8 on the left side as opposed to 11, and 4 on the right side as opposed to 9.
So those spaces will be available that's in the inset on the left side.
Yeah, those will be available all the time.
Okay.
Yep, full time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're joined by Commissioner Doris Ray from the Disability Advisory Committee. Doris, right now we're asking any questions we have or comments we may have about the updates from Melwood.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a few questions here. One is there is both vehicle, there's the front entrance that's used by both the residents and the workers and other persons coming to the Melwood work site. Is that correct?
Yes, there will be a main entrance that will serve residents, Melwood, and any visitors and employees.
Right. And so you're mentioning that deliveries would be done in the drop off and pickup zone, right?
Correct.
And I would ask you to consider how and what priority that area will be given to individual residents as well as people working at Melwood who are arriving to be dropped off and and picked up by a paratransit vehicle, in other words, either Metro Access or Star. And how are you going to maintain clearance so the vehicles can get in and out as they are wont to do because of keeping Metro Access schedules while there are trucks sitting there making deliveries?
So we have one short-term drop-off pickup drop-off space that is to the east, and adjacent to that is a 42-foot space which would accommodate the paratransit and Metro. It is a short-term drop-off space, and like we said, Melwood does not get a lot of deliveries during the week, and the residents will get them at certain times of the day, but we just expect that area to be shared. But there is special construction to make sure that that drop off, that 42-foot landing space, does work for those with disabilities.
I would suggest that you need to reserve it for paratransit drive up, particularly during the day, and into the evening, because people are going to be arriving back home up to 1 a.m. in the morning if they're using paratransit. I'm also concerned about whether both on the surface, there's a surface lot as well as an underground lot, right?
No, we're removing the existing surface lot, so all parking will be below grade on site.
Okay, so I would suggest that you consider increasing the usual percentage for parking near, that's in a building that's near a metro, because this is an unusual situation, and people with disabilities who are residents are going to be having personal assistants who come and need to park, as well as their own vehicles, some of which will be fully accessible vehicles, vans, minivans, and automobiles. And they're going to need more than the minimum required parking under the Fair Housing Act and the ADA, because it sounds like the compliance here is going to be a bit wishy, because Melwood would be required to be under the ADA standard, whereas the fair housing standards are going to have to be met for the residents, and any accommodation in terms of closer parking, because a lot of people with disabilities are going to have problems. Well, there's not going to be an outside a surface parking lot, so that may help the problem. But anyway, I think that kind of thing. Also on the transportation.
Doris, I'm going to interrupt you
Okay,
there.
I'm going to ask for.
Yeah, we're going to get to transportation in a moment. So
I'll skip that one, but I want to say that since they updated and said they were going to come to commissions, I think it's imperative that you come to the meeting of the Disability Commission, and also to have the visual information in an accessible format for members of our commission, including myself, so that there is narrative in lieu of things that are only in graphics. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray. We're going to Commissioner Lewin.
Got nothing on project update.
Okay. Commissioner Bagley.
Just that I like the new entrance.
Commissioner Lentemi.
Pass.
I'm also going to yield. So we're going to Commissioner Peterson. on project updates. Any questions or comments?
I also like the new entrance. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sockwell.
I agree with everybody. I think the entrance is much improved, particularly like the elimination of some of the hard concrete and transfer to green space. I understand your comments about, I guess, steps in the right direction. And so with respect to the tree canopy, I'll have more to say about that once we get to the green space issues.
I love the new entrance. I think that's fabulous. Thank you so much. And I am thrilled that you managed to figure out how to do the 6-foot sidewalk all along. I would have complained if you hadn't. Thank you so much.
Nothing further.
Just also noting that I appreciate the switching from east to west for the new pedestrian main access. That's a great move. And also, if I heard correctly, the sidewalk width increased to a full 6 feet. That's also excellent. Thank you. No other further comments.
No comments.
Online, I'm going to give an opportunity to Commissioners Guevara and Linick if either one of you have questions or comments regarding project updates.
Nope. Over to you.
And same here. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, I'm going to take chair's discretion and align myself with Commissioner Ray's request regarding the Disability Advisory Committee. I think she's brought up some points with great merit, and I would strongly encourage that they be included in the round robin of advisory groups that will follow this meeting. Is it a? Well, I'm going to get to transportation next. What's your question? Yeah. Well, don't worry. We're getting there. Yeah. Oh, yes. Please. Yes. Let's grab you a mic. Thank you. Well, let's get you a mic so that
I just
you
want
can
to
hear
say
me.
it's, I think the facade is dramatically improved, but my understanding is that there will be salvaging of materials from the old building. And I think we would like to see the old brick, for instance, used in that new facade, and not really sure why that would be a problem if it is. Thank you.
Yeah, we actually have not committed to saving the materials from the existing building. There is a cost associated with that. We have reinterpreted that facade, but we are not proposing to keep the existing materials.
I guess I misunderstood. I was informed yesterday by our staff that there was an agreement that some of the materials would be salvaged. Okay.
Okay, that wraps up project updates. We're going to move on to transportation, keeping an eye on the clock. We're a few minutes before 8, so I think we're okay on time. This time, I'm actually going to go back to this side of the table and start with Commissioner Weir. If you have any comments or questions regarding transportation.
A question and maybe some and some comments on staff slide 11. This is the proposed conditions for South Grant Street. On the typical street section, can you confirm whether or not on the 13-foot travel lane, does that include or exclude the gutter pan?
I don't recall that off the top of my head.
I can answer. It includes the gutter pan.
The 13-foot travel lane includes the gutter.
Yes.
Okay. I remember my 9th grade geometry teacher saying that all good geometry students don't go by looks, but it might be helpful to just bump that line over if that's possible. That's a quibble, so take it for the 1.5 cents that it's worth. My comment is that well, let me ask another question of staff. The 27-foot clear width, is this another example of us designing our streets to accommodate the county's unnecessarily aggressive minimum requirements for ladder trucks?
So the 26 feet is for the fire aerial access, yes.
Okay, and am I right that this is another example where had we been content to comply with the actual state code itself, that a 20-foot width would be necessary, but we have opted to pursue a wider and more suburban form of minimum requirements for our apparatus.
Our fire department is requiring that 26 feet. They're, again, it's the fire aerial access required for their truck to be able to anchor to serve the building in the event that they need to ladder access.
The kernel of my question is, does state code require 20 or 26 feet?
Sorry, I'm going off of our local fire departments.
Okay.
requirements.
My understanding, thank you. My understanding is that state code would only require 20 feet here. And I think this is another example of maintaining an exceedingly dangerous condition of 13 and 14-foot travel lanes so that we can pursue the kind of cross sections that might be appropriate west of the Mississippi in a city like Denver, but have no business in a city like Arlington. These kinds of road widths encourage fast driving and they encourage unsafe driving. And as is a concern for this neighborhood, they deprive of us an opportunity to include additional on-street parking spaces, which is a concern both for the neighbors as well as both for the neighborhood generally, as well as the churches. And I'm sure even the applicant would like to see a few more on-street parking spaces there. And so my comment, I guess, is really more for colleagues and staff, but we have to do something about the underlying policy decisions that we're making when it comes to requiring more clear width than the code itself requires. That's all I have on the transportation section. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Echoing Commissioner Weir's concerns about the width of the street, South Grant. Also on crosswalks, there will be, I assume from the county's side, improvements to the crosswalks when construction is underway.
There are no proposed improvements to the existing crosswalks.
Okay, so especially not anything like mid-block, it'll just be existing and the same. I know there are currently bump outs, neck downs on South Hayes and South Grant, and those will be remaining, correct? And one last question on the bike parking, the 47 secured bike spaces, that'll be full class 1 bike parking in the garage, I assume?
Yes.
And any of those sized for larger bikes like cargo bikes or anything like that, just in case any of the residents or employees decide to use cargo bikes for transit or transportation?
No, we have not incorporated that.
Thank you.
Hi. A few comments. Again, thank you for the wider sidewalk. A little question about how can we improve the safety for pedestrians on Grant going by the loading dock driveway? We have warning signs, maybe flashing lights when it's in use or something. And I know you say there's just going to be garbage trucks and moving in, moving out. But I suspect that some of these Pluto drivers are going to try to deliver things over there as well. So something else to think about. Mainly, I want to talk about buses. Now, you are pretty sure that the current bus shelter is going to stay there, right? And you are making one improvement by improving the accessibility ramp. Are you going to make any other accessibility improvements to the shelter?
That's the only one that we're making so far. And, you know, the last time we were here, we thought it was going away. And then we saw at the end of November, there was an update and it's staying. And so we are working with staff to try and figure out what happened. And if it in fact is intended to stay, those are the improvements that will be provided.
And my real concern is, my reading of the Better Bus Network is only one bus route is going to remain on 23rd. That the 223 buses are not going to go down 23rd. One is going to turn from Glebe onto Mount Vernon Avenue, and the other is going to continue down Glebe. and the one that stays on Glebe, which is the equivalent of 10A, basically goes from the Pentagon to Huntington. So you have nothing coming from the west. And either I hope that Arlington County can come up with some art buses or something can be done. I find it unbelievable that we will be left with just the one bus. And I use those buses, so I care very deeply. Thank you.
No questions.
Commissioner Peterson.
Steve. So I just wanted to align myself with Doris's comments earlier about making sure that residents and Melwood guests somehow are prioritized in the pickup drop-off area. I'm not sure if there's space for like a Amazon truck and a STAR vehicle, but just making sure that guests with different abilities are able to get in and out to enter the building without having to wait an undue amount of time. I also, Doris started talking about some of the parking needs downstairs, making sure that the spaces might need to be wider. Maybe there's a greater percentage of handicap parking spaces, making sure we're really analyzing that. And I also really liked what I heard earlier about cargo bike parking. It is becoming more and more popular. And I think having spots for cargo bikes specifically would be helpful. Thank you.
I guess I'm up. Okay. I have two quick questions. So yeah, so going back to Commissioner Ray's, I guess I'd call it a comment about the parking, maybe increasing parking versus your proposal. So this building, it aims to market itself for residents with disabilities, but of course, very well could and probably will have a variety of residents without disabilities. So that's the context of my question. I mean, it's the intent, right, is to market. But it got me thinking in the analysis of the parking ratios, and I'm throwing you on the spot here, by the way. So if you don't have a quick answer, it's okay. But I'm just wondering, like, have you thought about that ratio in the context of that need that Commissioner Ray is speaking of versus kind of more of a general population, with that parking ratio? Because I think what Commissioner Ray is speaking to is important, which is there might be more of an increased need for caregivers and other folks if you have some residents with disabilities. So I'm just not looking for a pat answer here, but if that has been considered in kind of coming up with this requested ratio.
So the requested ratio, we have looked at other buildings. We know there are some other buildings with individuals with disabilities, like we've talked about the Gilliam before. And I don't think additional spaces were provided for that. Here, of course, we're hoping to have more than there. We do have 6, I think, ADA spaces in the below grade garage. We also have to remember that Melwood has 20 spaces, and Melwood is going to also be able to coordinate utilization of those spaces, both during their operating hours and during off hours. So there may be opportunities for additional residential visitor parking when Melwood is not using those spaces.
Sure, I appreciate that. And I guess I bring it up because I think it's a valid concern that Commissioner Ray is bringing up. On the other hand, if you've been to any of these meetings, you know that every parking space that gets built is extremely expensive. And I don't know what it is for this project, but it could be $75,000 or it could even be north of that. And so it's that balancing, because it's one thing to say we have more spaces, but more spaces means more cost. And who does the cost get passed along to? Typically who's paying for the units, which is the residents. So that's something else to consider. That's it. I'm going to go to Commissioner Lentami.
Yeah, first I'd like to align myself with Commissioner Van Hine, thanking you for the widening the sidewalk and making it 6 feet, at least 6 feet all around. That's a nice advancement. I also like to align myself with Commissioner Weir about the width of the street. I too have continued to be troubled by our designing our streets around our fire trucks rather than the other way around. That it is better for us to have a narrower street where traffic will be slower and impeded rather than a wider one where they can flow, especially in a residential neighborhood such as this. So those are my only comments. Thank you.
Before I go to Commissioner Bagley, we have Bishop Barker from the Church of Latter-day Saints here. So if you'd like to make a comment or question, please go ahead, Bishop Barker.
Hi, thank you. I'm Bishop Brian Barker from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We own the two buildings immediately across the street at 727 23rd Street and 745. We would like to thank Melwood for their generous usage of the parking on Sundays, that's the surface parking. We'd just like to be a good neighbor and plan for the future. We currently have over 450 attendees who come on a Sunday morning into the afternoon. And we're just trying to find out if there's any opportunity for us to park in the Melwood property at all. And what, if not, what this county and others would recommend for us to do, because we can't really control where these people park in the neighborhood. It will greatly impact the neighborhood when we lose, I believe there's over 50 surface parking spaces right now. And so we just like to see if there's any opportunity for parking in the existing site. And that's our biggest concern. We are not opposed or anything. We just would like to plan ahead.
Thank you, Bishop Barker. I'm going to go ahead to Commissioner Bagley.
I'd like to align myself with Commissioner Ware's comments, Commissioner Hines' comments, and Commissioner Ray's earlier comments, and hope that there can be a good way to find spaces for your worshipers. So thank you.
Going back to the issue of bike parking, will there be any bike parking that will be available to charge electric bikes? No.
We don't have that plan so far.
Something that I know you were, I thought I saw online 10% EV car parking, but I heard you just say it might just be 4%. Yeah, this is.
So sorry. That's us being uber cautious because it's a minimum of 4%. But if we get, and I forget the name of if we get the funding for the certification that we're looking for, it will be 10%. 10% already wired? Yes. And what about 10% wire ready. So, and that is, I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with the, that's the zero energy ready home certification. So when we pursue that, we will be committing to 10% EV and 10% EV ready. It's just that we can't be certain we're going to get it, which is why I kind of defaulted to the minimum 4%, but we hope it's more.
Doris, Commissioner Ray, do you have any questions or comments about transportation? Doris, can I interrupt you real quick? Can we, thank you, Reverend Coleman. Okay, go ahead. We're having trouble hearing you on Teams.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was mentioning a modification of policy and procedure to consider that for the ratio of parking. I was wondering if you do that. Also, I think it's very important that you're increasing the width of the street scapes because they really need to be wide enough to accommodate two wheelchair users passing, going in different directions, or passing each other. And also, however, you said there would be no other improvements to the streetscapes. I'm concerned that a lot of the streets are not only narrower, but may lack curb ramps and accessible intersections, and that it's very important to at least provide that in the path of travel to the subway stations and the Crystal City subway station and or towards Pentagon City, and working with WMATA to get the bus stops made accessible, because it's some of the bus stops are just a stop and you have to cross over grass and such. There's going to be a lot of traffic by people with disabilities through this area. And also, I'm wondering whether, in looking at the Better Bus proposal, I think you need to look at that because of, I agree with the statements there, and there could be some detail there. I serve on that. I served on one of their subcommittees, the Better Bus Project. And also, I will note that that I'm trying to remember what I was going to note. I'd like some. I think it's important to look at the path of travel a wheelchair user would use to get directly to the subway without having necessarily to get on a bus, and also ensure that the lighting there on the streets isn't turned into very high intensity lighting that will blind people with disabilities, and also looking at the nature of the neighborhood. Those, I think, need to be looked at and discussed with all parties, I think. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
The one last thing is
It's okay.
parking. Is
Yep.
parking on street parking. There needs to be an increased number of designated handicap parking. Even though it's a residential area, it's also being used by a commercial establishment, and there needs to be sufficient for visitors to the building since there's no surface parking. There needs to be an increase of designated parking spaces that are accessible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray. Reverend Coleman?
I concur with the need for safety at the loading dock. I don't know. I don't want any blind spots there and somebody to step out. So I would like that to be looked into. Also, the speeding on the street, the thought of that is concerning. I don't know if that's mitigated with speed humps, as they're called, or whatever that may be. But those are two concerns that I have.
Thank you. Ms. Meyer?
Hello. I would we would challenge at Rural Highlands Civic Association would challenge the county to provide statistics on these lower ratios for parking that they are advocating. There were three items that were put in the presentation. We have not seen those kinds of statistics being backed up. In fact, the studies that we presented in our November letter were going in the very opposite direction. These are big units. These are nearly townhouse-sized units, 2 and 3 bedrooms. And in studies that we cited from Rutgers University and from Fairfax County, that there's no difference between, there should be no difference between, and there is no difference between the amount of cars that are needed in an affordable housing project and a market rate project. In fact, the way things are going in the latest sort of post-COVID environment is more people are driving, and more people are driving to work. And in a location like this, if someone doesn't have a job, if they have a car, they have a job. They can go and become an Uber driver. They can drive to a restaurant in Seven Corners and get that job there. This is, having a car is an equity issue for people who are living in these houses, and we don't understand why the county is taking this position. So we would really like some feedback on that particular issue. And at the same time, what that's going to do is not, if you don't provide enough parking, and that parking is paid for by the cost model in the LIHTC tax credits. So it's not that the renters need to pay more for their parking, it's that the tax credits are paying more for the parking. And it's the amount of parking that it needs to be. It is what it is. We don't short shift parking in a hospital or at a school across town. When we have public dollars that are going towards facilities, we don't make them worse in one place than another. And that's what this proposal is doing. It's short shifting parking for people that need it the most and not people that need it the least. And we would really, really like to see the staff and somebody who is supposed to be doing this come up and really come up with the statistics that prove that this is really something that is equitable and fair to the residents and to the neighborhood, which is going to be taking the impacts of the parking when it overflows. It's going to overflow from the churches. We just heard from at least the two churches. It's going to overflow from the retail. We've got the ambulance that's in the neighborhood. We have restaurants. We have an airport that backs up that regularly. We have backups down 23rd Street that are back up regularly. So there's just a lot going on in this area, and we're adding more to it without thinking about it in context. The neighborhood, Aurora Highlands, which surrounds this building on all sides, will need 24/7 parking restrictions so that for residential only, so that the overflow parking is not impacting people's everyday lives. And we think that is something that should be mitigated, should be provided by the county if they're going to be allowing this overflow parking situation to happen. A lot of real concerns here about what's being proposed. And we've written a lot. We've provided backup to what we've written. We have gotten no responses. And we think that this is a travesty and a train wreck that's coming right at us.
Thank you. Mr. Castle?
Just my one suggestion would be a second short-term parking space on the south side of the PUDO spaces. There's mention of, handicap, make sure the handicap people have access and things like that. So that would be my one suggestion, is having a second 15-minute space to the other side.
Thank you. We're going to go online for Commissioners Guevara and Linick, if you have any comments or questions about transportation. Going once, going twice.
No comment on my end. Thanks.
All right, perfect. Thanks. Okay, so I'm looking at the clock. It's 8:20. I need to assess what public comment looks like. That's really important that we give those folks an opportunity, but I think we're having a really nice conversation here. So what I'm going to do here is our last two topics are open space and landscaping, and then green building and sustainability. So what I'd like to do is I'm just going to combine those topics. We're going to cover both of them though. So if you have comments or questions for either or both, let's ask them now, and however long that takes is however long that takes. So I'm going to keep switching it up. So I'm actually, if I could go back to Mr. Castle, you knew what I was looking for you. If you have any comments or questions about open space or landscaping or green building and sustainability.
I'm good. I'm passing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Meyer.
Yeah.
And I want to thank folks, like you just went and then you're coming back. So I appreciate folks working with me on that. Ms. Meyer, go
I
ahead.
need to get my notes together. So, okay, so for the green building, we've written in our comments as well that because of its location, this site meets some LEED standards pretty easily when you're an urban building like this and near Metro. So we think that it would be not a heavy lift to increase the LEED scorecard here. If you look at the scorecard that was presented, a lot of it's just because they're doing Energy Star, the minimum requirements, and because of location. We'd also like to encourage the adaptive reuse of the historic building, and at least the facade, which I think it was recommended by staff, and keeping that northeast corner open and green, and maintaining all of those trees that are mature trees that in that location. We've presented ideas for how that might be implemented successfully on the site in our letter that we dropped yesterday. Think that there's a modest decrease in the number of units, and you can still get the northeast corner and the facade to remain. So what was the other one? Open space, landscaping. Yeah, those are the issues that we would raise.
And if I'll go around again one last time. So if there's something that you missed, we'll
Yeah, I
get
think
it.
that's pretty much it.
Okay.
A lot of, and I'm just going to say a lot of our comments are in that letter and that we've posted, and we really would like to get feedback and request feedback from Planning Commission on those letters. Do you think that's something that we would be able to get feedback, response from Planning Commission, the applicant or staff on all of these questions? Any or all?
I can't, I
Anything.
can only speak for myself. This will come before the planning commission at some here. I think that's still on. And obviously you're welcome to meet with staff, offline at any point. But I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for my fellow planning commissioners.
And what would you say?
We're having the meeting right now. And so right now, the purpose of this meeting is to gather feedback and to provide comments, and I will likely provide some of my own at the end. But I think at this point, I'm going to move to Reverend Coleman, if you've got any comments on these topics. Thank you. Thank you. Doris?
I pass on this time. Say that as you plan open space in other facilities, please make sure they're fully accessible.
Yeah, can we make sure that mic is on? Doris, do you mind just repeating yourself real quick?
Oh, I just said I'm passing on this topic, except to say that as you plan open space, please make sure it's accessible and usable by people with disabilities. But the other thing I will say is, in terms of the lead gold and versus silver and utility, I mean, not utilities, appliances and stuff that are used in the apartments and such, I would like to emphasize that all electric appliances are problems for people who are blind or have vision impairments, unless they have knobs and other tactile what do you call it? Indicators and stuff. If there are flat screens that don't talk, you can't use them. So anyway, you're considering people with disabilities, please consider that.
Okay, Commissioner Lewin?
So you mentioned that you're not reusing the brick. Are you recycling it in some way to try to reduce the carbon? It's supposed to just, maybe I just come sit with you.
It's a real balancing act, as we discussed the last time we were here, that this building is already more expensive than the typical building because we are meeting those Kelsey standards. For the LIHTC application and financing, cost is a factor that they look at when they're looking at whether they're going to award the project or not. And that is leading us to say that we are not going to be recycling the building materials or reusing them. And it really does come down to a cost issue.
And their building's not going to be, those new building materials won't be reflective of heat or anything. They're standard brick. They're not.
Correct. Standard brick.
So not reflective, to avoid heat island effect or anything like that. So you're not going for LEED, but you're saying that what you are going for is comparable to LEED gold. how is it on, going back to what Commissioner Ray was saying about lighting? How is it on dark sky lighting, bird-friendly glass? Some of the things that I did look to try to see, but it's hard to compare these new certifications. I think Mr. Lamb mentioned that too. So bird-friendly glass, dark skies. Yes, using bird-friendly glass.
We have our sustainability consultant on virtually. Can I ask them to be let open to speak? Teal Butler.
All right, Teal, you should be able to unmute your mic. If you're having difficulties,
Hi.
there you go.
Yes, thank you. Of course, as you were saying, the credits don't translate exactly. There's not a bird-friendly class item in there, but certainly additional attributes can be considered that are outside of the rating system. And the dark sky lighting is another one that's it's pretty typical. They're not necessarily directly covered by the current program.
So are you going to, it's not required, but are you going to use bird-friendly glass?
Right now, we're not committing to that.
Okay, and the lighting, same thing, it's not required?
Same thing.
Okay. Is there any, I appreciate the green roofs, that's really exciting to see. Is there any source of renewable energy being considered for this project?
No, not at this project.
Okay. And last but not least, are you irrigating with gray water or fresh water?
No.
No, not irrigating at all.
No irrigation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know there's costs involved with this, but when we take things down and we just add to the landfill, we're not doing the best we can for the environment. So I would just encourage you, if it's not something that you can incur the cost on, I don't care if you put out a query all over the country to say, is there somebody who's interested who we don't have to pay for, but we can still go through and get what we need to get done? Just make that exhaustive call, because it doesn't do any of us any good to have all this stuff wind up in a landfill when, materials are expensive now, and there could be some things that somebody could repurpose. I want to align myself with some of the concerns from C2E2. I'd be interested to see how the certifications do line up, as well as some of the other things you brought up. And to the Civic Association, as a former member, as a former president of a civic association, it was not uncommon, and it's done by other civic associations as well, that you can request a 2x2 meeting with 2 planning commissioners at the same time, and just ask them or plead your case or whatever it is you want to do. So, county board members are accessible to you. There's just a tremendous amount of access here in the county. So I would encourage you, if you've not done that and you're concerned that maybe your letter isn't enough, that you do that. Thank you.
Dark sky should be something you should be able to do fairly easily, just in simply designing. It shouldn't be an added really cost. It just requires thinking it. So as far as landscaping and open space, I'd like to know more about the between the park and the property fencing wall. What are we doing now, if anything, different from the original plan, number one? Number two, I'd like to know, if not tonight, then at the Planning Commission, what sort of landscaping there's going to be along screening landscaping that would be along that border between the park and the property and the building.
So we are proposing to leave the existing fence. It's a county fence. And as to the landscaping, if you want to pull up the exhibit, we did increase that buffer. Especially, we pushed the transformers back and we added another row of evergreen trees in that buffer area. And so the landscaping has evolved over time to add trees to that area.
Okay, great. If you could then, for the next one, give information on how robust those trees are going to be. How tall do they, when they're mature, how tall will they go? How close are they? Will they essentially be something you can't see through?
Okay.
That sort of information.
Sure.
So thank you.
I'm going to yield other than to say I align myself with Commissioner Lewin's. I think it was really a request for a bird-friendly glass, so I would align myself with that. Let's see, Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you. So I just want to reinforce Commissioner Bagley's comments about the importance of recycling the materials. And if there is a place where you can donate them, I know Habitat for Humanity sometimes accepts old building materials. I am super excited to hear that the building is fully electric. We have been pushing that for a lot of our new building design. So it's great to see that that's going to happen here. I have a question about whether or not the tree canopy percentage includes the green roof, because I've been told by staff in forestry that, okay, so I've been told by staff working in the forestry department that you can sometimes include green roof. And so you could theoretically, promise a higher percentage of tree canopy if it meets their specifications. That said, I would like to see more done with the green buffer. The slide, if we can pull that up, that showed not the overview, but like kind of the view from the park, looking at different angles. In some of the places, there was more fence than there was greenery. I think it's the next slide. Maybe a few more over. Well, yeah, okay, around, maybe go forward one or back one. Yeah, okay, somewhere around here. One of the slides that I can get much closer on, it looked like there was a lot of fence. And so I don't know if there's a way, when I Google green fences, you get these things that have like, ivy climbing on them, or they've actually built the fence to support things, or more taller bushes kind of along the whole perimeter. And so that's what I was kind of thinking when we were in LRPC, when we said there would be a green buffer, the whole fence would kind of feel like you were potentially looking into a forest instead of a couple of trees and a couple of bushes that are like only, so high, and then you can still see a giant fence there. So if there's more opportunity to like really make the park feel like it's in the middle of a green forest. That would
Can I
be
ask
great.
a question on that though? Because this is a view from 24th towards the building. Our landscaping is on our property. The fence is on the park property. So when you say buffer
Okay.
the fence, are you asking us to plant trees in the park? I'm just trying to understand your comment.
Yeah, so then
because-
maybe from staff's perspective, when you were thinking a green buffer, when that was discussed during the LRPC process, it was not anything to, or how were you envisioning that to mitigate the views from the park, I think is what we were talking about at the time.
Right, kind of minimizing the visual impact from the park. So the green buffer, could be like vegetated screening in the form of trees. Obviously, it could also involve like how far the building is set back from the park. But a lot of that strategy in terms of minimizing the visual impact would, come from that vegetated buffer.
Okay. Okay, yeah, if there's any more that we can do, I think that would be appreciated. And if you could coordinate with staff to do more with the fence, if that's allowed, I think that would be a really nice benefit. Finally, native species, we always like to push that as much as you can do that for there. And the bird-friendly glass, since you do have the rooftop kind of green area, birds may be more likely to be flying in that area. We do have the park right next door, and nobody likes to see a bunch of dead birds, along the perimeter of the building. And that is not nice for the people who live in the building or the kids playing nearby. So thank you.
I guess three topics for me. With respect to the tree canopy, I applaud your increase in the tree canopy. The staff cited 22% coverage. You're saying 23%, but we think that you can get to 25% as recommended by the LRPC report, either with the addition of street trees or the less preferable rooftop trees. We think there are opportunities to increase that by 2%. The LRPC report, as I read it, recommended on-site coverage of 25%, and we think you're still short of that. We would like to see that remaining 2% or whatever closed. The second comment is the LRPC report was also pretty upfront in recommending preservation or conservation of mature trees in the northeast corner as possible. So what is the applicant's position on that?
Our position is that we have located the building and balanced where we are putting the building to address the majority of the concerns that we have heard. And the main concern we have heard is getting away from the park. And so we're balancing trying to have a building that is responsive to the GLUP principles, but also provides the amount of affordable housing and Melwood programming that we are currently aiming to provide.
Well, fair enough. But with respect to the trees, were you not able to conserve them? Were you able to conserve a minimal amount? I mean, what are you saying?
It's not possible to save them given the location of the building and the below grade parking and the improvements that we are making on the streetscape on 23rd Street with the new sidewalk. If you remember, originally we were preserving that sidewalk in that location, which was substandard, to retain the existing trees along 23rd in that location. But in order to adjust the streetscape, we made the wider sidewalk at the expense of those trees.
Oh, okay. I hear the explanation and it sounds good, but you're saying you weren't able to preserve the trees.
Correct.
Third topic is with respect to the landscaping. Are there any efforts to put in shrubs or bushes that would attract pollinators, preferably away from that nice playground you have along back there?
I see my landscape consultant nodding yes.
Okay. Thanks.
When we get to the details, yes.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Thank you. And I align myself with Commissioners Ray and Lewin and Bagley and Peterson and you. All great comments, and I have nothing else to add. I do have a suggested community benefit, and I don't know when to raise that.
I mean, now is as good a time as any
Okay.
because we're going to be getting to closing remarks.
Right.
So
That'll be my closing remark. Melwood has served as a voting precinct for Arlington County for many, many years, and we really want that to continue. And we want that to be in the site plan specs.
We are agreeable to that.
Yay, thank you.
My questions have been raised and answered. Thank you.
Just saying I like the setback of the main entrance, providing a little bit more grass and bush space. So it's a nice change for landscaping. Thank you.
Nothing to add.
okay, great. All right, it's about 8:40. So let's do this. This has been a really productive conversation. So we're going to go around the table now since this is the second and final SPRC scheduled for this project. We'll do concluding remarks. And if what you want to say has already been said, please feel free to align yourself with someone else because we would like to quickly get to public comment. We have, I think, at least 14 speakers, 15 speakers.
If anyone is dialing in by phone, you can sign up for public comment by emailing emartin@arlingtonyay.us.
Right. So we will probably not start public comment until at least 8:50, and I expect the public comments will likely be 1 minute. So I'm going to look at commission. So anyway, so this is concluding remarks, and you can give any concluding remarks that you want to, not on just tonight, but the project as a whole, since we've had 2 meetings now. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Weir, and then we'll go around the table. Before I do that, I don't think were there any questions online from Commissioners Gavada or Linick about the last topic, open space, landscaping, green building, sustainability?
Not on my end.
Okay, great. I'm going to move ahead to Commissioner Weir, and then we'll go around the table for concluding remarks.
Nothing at this point.
Also, nothing at this point that hasn't been already said.
Simply to say thank you.
Thank you, and I hope you figure out the bus routes.
Thanks. I too pass.
Pass.
I I'll just say I really appreciate everybody's participation, the thoughtfulness that went into this. You know, I know folks submitted written comments. There's been public comment. There will be more public comment. This is, I think, the second SPRC that I've chaired, and the first one with Commissioner Lentelmi. So I really appreciate everybody kind of coming to the table and really giving this a lot of careful thought. I'll pass it to my colleague, Commissioner Lentelmi.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Just something for staff for the next time. Would it be possible for you to pull some information on the RPP program for the neighborhood to include Sunday hours, since parking is a concern of theirs?
And you want that for planning commission? Or
I'd like to see it. Thank you.
we'll have that.
If you have it ready for TC, Transportation Commission too.
I know I had a lot of questions about things that aren't happening, but I did want to say again how happy we are that it's all electric, how happy to see green roofs, happy to see Energy Star 75, Energy Star appliances, WaterSense fixtures. There are a lot of great things happening, and I did want to mention that. There's still things you can do, but
Commissioner Ray, Doris, if you have any concluding thoughts.
Yes, I thank you for all the information considering our questions. And I would ask regarding community benefits about whether there will be facilities in the residence or in the work site that might be available to the disability community or host nonprofits that serve the disability community for their programs and training, and to consider that. And also, I'd like us to consider, or the Planning Commission to consider that we keep saying this is near public transportation, and metro is the big thing. And if you have ever, as a non-driver, had to walk either to either of the closest metro stations or roll in a wheelchair, it is not really as close as you think. So I think that also bodes for looking at some modification of the parking standards and making sure there's enough parking for both the facility, the work facility and the residents. And the last thing I'll say is to consider how you're designing that main entrance so that there might be some separation. The only building that I can think of that's kind of like that is the, I think it's 901 North Stafford. So it's Randolph Towers maybe, which has one side that is office building and medical offices, and the other side that's residence, but the actual lobby is nicely situated, so you don't have to feel that you're coming into a residence site, an office building or workplace, and that the residents feel they have some kind of main lobby to come to. Otherwise, I really appreciate the opportunity to provide comments and hope to see more discussion as it goes through the various commissions and the Planning Commission and such.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray. Reverend Coleman.
I just want to thank everybody for the work that you have done and during this process, the feedback that you've tried to respond to, and the thoughtfulness that has gone into the questions. Calvary's been there over 100 years. We don't have any plans of going anywhere. And we just want to be in ministry with and for the community in whatever capacity we can, and whatever that looks like on that corner.
Thank you. Ms. Meyer.
Yeah, we've been pretty clear. We think this is a wildly inappropriate project for the neighborhood. Neighborhood has a 35-foot height limit. This is over 60 feet the last time I looked at it, double the height. It's too much density. The parking is wildly insufficient. It's just not a good project. I don't know a nicer way to say it, but it's just not. You're tearing down a historic building, you're getting rid of trees that have stood there for a long time, mature trees, not providing the required forestry canopy, et cetera, et cetera. We will continue to oppose this project unless those things are changed.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I was coordinating for public comment. Thank you for that comment, Mr. Castle. Okay, thank you. I think we got everybody. So thank you for that. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Commissioner Gavada, do you have any concluding remarks?
I'm just looking forward to seeing this project progress.
Thank you. And Commissioner Linick?
Just want to reiterate the Housing Commission's support for this project. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, folks. Okay, so thank you for all of your comments and questions and concerns raised tonight. We're not done yet, don't worry. But I'm remiss if I didn't appreciate all the work done by the applicants. So thank you for your presentations and answering of our many questions, as well as our wonderful county staff. So at this point, we're going to take public comment. And Emma, would it be easier to do in person? You're all ready to go. Okay.
I'll let you decide.
What? Why don't you just call it off? So we have time for 1 minute public comment tonight. And so we have a timer displayed. And if you need a warning, I'm happy to give that to you. And then when your time is up, then public comment will have concluded so that everybody has an opportunity to give their voice tonight. Let's call it off.
We'll start with our in-person comment, and first will be Joey Baresi, followed by Juan Bong, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing anyone's name wrong.
So if you're in person, we have a podium and mic up at the front.
Hello, I'm Joey Parisi. I'm 38 years old and I live over at True Grounds, Queens Court Road, True Grounds property in Roslyn. And I live in an affordable and inclusive community, and I think everyone should experience inclusive living. I encourage you, all of you, to expand your thinking about what is possible for people like me. I can tell you that after 2 years of living in my own apartment and being involved with OSG, that inclusive and affordable housing is something that contributes to well-being of all communities. I will encourage everyone to think that embracing this model is considering issues around equity and welcoming their new neighbors. And thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Mr. Baresi.
Our next speaker is Juan Bong, followed by Margot Greenlee.
I am Juan Vuong, a 27-year-old non-speaking or unreliably speaking autistic who spells to communicate on a letterboard or keyboard. I have been living at Gilliam Place for the past 4 years with a roommate, and it has changed my life for the better. I thought I would never move out of my parents' home, but now I have a place to call my own. Thanks to our stomping ground, I now have a community with friends and neighbors who acknowledge me and care about me, whom I participate in daily activities with. I go on walks in the neighborhood, pick up trash, attend book clubs, dinner clubs, movie nights, etc. with them. I now have a busy schedule and a rich life, thanks to being at Gilliam Place. I have acquired many independent skills since living on my own. I hope that other people with disabilities like me can also have their own place. The realization of the Melwood property, with its affordable and inclusive housing initiative, will benefit so many people, disabled and non-disabled.
The next speaker will be Margot Greenlee, followed by Bryant Atkins.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margot Greenlee. I'm the very proud executive director of Our Stomping Ground. And for the past few years, have had the pleasure of partnering with Wesley Housing and Melwood to provide programming for everybody that lives in the buildings. And so we're really excited about this wonderful opportunity to provide so many wonderful homes to the community. And we'll be right there doing the movie nights and the art and the walks around the neighborhood. We will pick up trash and we're going to be really wonderful neighbors to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be Bryant Atkins, followed by Jeffrey Williams.
Hello. I had a longer speech, but thanks to ChatGPT, it's shorter.
Brett, hold up. We're going to restart the timer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Brian Atkins, and I serve on the Disability Advisory Commission with Doris. Though I am speaking tonight in my personal capacity. First, I want to thank Melwood for their commitment to providing much needed, accessible, and affordable housing for people with disabilities. With over 9,800 individuals in Arlington living with a disability, accessible housing, including affordable accessible housing, is a critical need. Currently, less than 1% of new housing projects in the county include Type A accessible units. Melwood's plan to offer 30% accessible units in their total stock is commendable. Though I do encourage the applicant to consider applying universal design principles to all units to maximize accessibility for everyone. To the Aurora Highlands neighborhood and other surrounding communities, I understand your concerns about change, but I urge you to remember that a caring, inclusive community sometimes means making sacrifices for the greater good. This project aligns with
Mr. Atkins, thank you for your comment. Really appreciate it.
Next is Jeffrey Williams, followed by Nicholas Giacobbe.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Williams. A couple of remarks on the new changes. Very much approve of the moving of the entrance. The flagpole says this is where you enter the building. This is correct. Really like the 6-foot sidewalk. It's clear, unobstructed, all the way up to 23rd Street frontage. That's an improvement. I like the patio treatment in the back where you brought it down and it retreats a little bit from the park. I think that's an improvement. On transportation, the package delivery operations on 23rd, I think are a legitimate community concern. I would suggest that you look at expanding the loading, the drop-off zone in front of the entrance by taking one of those 6 spaces and making it 4 contiguous spaces for PUDO and deliveries in front of the building. And you could convert it back at the end of the day to a regular parking instead of short term. And then finally, I've watched so many SPRCs.
I'll give you like 10 seconds to wrap it up.
Ask for all electric buildings. And this is a committed affordable doing an electric building. This is an exemplar. We should want to see this. This is really great.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Williams.
Next is Nicholas Giacobbe, followed by Alice Hogan.
Great. Thanks, Nick Jacoby. I live around the corner from the project. This project is going to be approved. It's going to be approved 5-0 by the county board in February. I'm glad to see some changes along the way. The paint colors are great. It's looking better. The main entrance is where the main entrance should be. But I think there are things that we need to look at. The parking on Grant Street, that's a public good that the people of Arlington have chosen to give to the churches on Sundays. I'm not quite sure how a developer is allowed to take that away. The Civic Association has offered a lot of suggestions along the way. And as Stacy pointed out, we haven't received any responses and we're told we're not going to get any responses. I think it's important that we are at least have a possibility to be at the table and sit down, because projects are always better when they're done collaboratively. And remember, we're the ones who have to live with this project if there are any mistakes. All of you live elsewhere in Arlington, so that's important to remember. Finally, the Aurora Highlands neighborhood had a fantastic relationship with the Sheltered Occupational Center and with Linden Resources. Unfortunately, that's fallen apart, but we do look forward to welcoming our new neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Giacobbe.
Next is Alice Hogan, followed by Charles McCullough. He will be virtual.
Going down. Okay. Good evening. I'm Alice Hogan. I'm with NVAHA, Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance, and I run the Arlington Alliance. I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, thank you to the developer for being so responsive to so many comments from the last meeting. It really, this project is coming together beautifully, and I'm so excited. I wanted to just highlight a few things where the GLUP study goals are really being met with what we heard this evening, including prioritizing affordable and accessible housing with this redevelopment, providing deeply affordable units and geographically distributed across the county, improving pedestrian experience and enhanced streetscapes that will benefit the entire neighborhood, creating a proper urban frontage on South 23rd Street, and also the enhanced biophilic, particularly around the back to protect the park is excellent. Aligning the maximum height of 60 feet, which was in the GLUP study, with the mixed use nature of the building, and yet limiting any bulk by using step backs as you go up.
Ms. Hogan, I'll give you about 10 seconds.
Oh, sorry. And thank you for the green and sustainable components and for acknowledging the history of this building with a nice new entrance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hogan.
The next public speaker will be Charles McCullough, joining us virtually, followed by Bernie Byrne.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Charles McCullough, an Arlington Ridge resident. As we are in the season of giving, I see this development as a gift of vision and values, a reflection of who we are as a community and who we aspire to be. This project beautifully weaves equity, compassion, and opportunity into the fabric of South Arlington while meeting the GLUP study goals. With over 100 affordable residences, including homes for adults with disabilities, this development prioritizes accessibility, quality housing at a key location, seamlessly transitioning between the commercial and residential areas on 23rd Street. This silver certified green building also enhances the pedestrian experience with wider sidewalks, safer crossings, and welcoming green spaces buffering Nellie Custis Park. As a history graduate, I appreciate how the design honors the site's legacy, including references to its original architecture and plans for interpretive signage. This thoughtful approach ensures the past is respected while building a brighter and more inclusive future. In short, the project is more than a building. It's a promise that South Arlington will remain a place where everyone belongs. I look forward to its approval and the lasting value it will bring to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough.
Next is Bernie Byrne, followed by Rob Douglas.
This project lacks biophilia. The green roof is much too small considering the total space of the roof. There are no green walls. Native vines should hang from the roof and ledges and climb on trellises from the ground. As I've already informed the applicant, the schedule does not conform to the County Board's monarch pledge. There is no common milkweed, as far as the well-known importance of that species. It's the only way. It's the eastern migration is largely dependent on that one. The plant schedule claims butterfly weed. However, the monarchs lay few eggs on that milkweed. It is the wrong milkweed. The plant schedule contains non-native plants. These should be removed. At least 2 of them are invasive. The plant schedule lists 27 cultivators. However, some have reduced nutritional benefits. Others are toxic. Replace all cultivars with native ferrets, if any. The plant schedule states that the sod will contain a durable and tall fescue blend. This blend contains several invasive species of sod plants. Do not use DuraBlend. I would have more to say, but I don't have the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne.
Next is Rob Douglas, followed by Rachel Hicks.
Hi there, I'm Rob Douglas. I live here in Aurora Highlands. I wanted to agree with those who've already expressed concerns about the parking situation. The building is surrounded by streets with residential zone parking restrictions, 71 parking spots for 105 units of various sizes, and no visitor spots, except when it might be possible to work something out to use the 20 Melwood parking spots. Wow, that sure is going to be tough on the residents who are living there. Where will the daily visitors of those residents park? How about the churches on Sundays? Before Melwood, the elementary school allowed the parking lot to be used on Sundays by the churches. Now what? Many Aurora Highlands residents have real concerns about how this might impact our already crowded streets and how it might impact our quality of life and the character of the neighborhood. There simply isn't enough on or off-street parking to support a building of this size. Someone mentioned the minimum number of ADA parking spots, handicap spots, etc. Seems like a building that caters to people with disabilities might need to meet such requirements. I urge county officials to recommend that the applicant reduce the number of apartments to allow for the appropriate number of visitors parking spots 24 hours a day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Rachel Hicks, followed by Ben Watts.
Hi, my name is Rachel Hicks, and I'm the Aurora Highlands Civic Association president. I'll be brief because I don't have a lot of time. First, I think that there's a problem that we're below the tree canopy and that we're counting the park space as trees. That is not part of the GLEP study. Second, we'd like to align ourselves with Doris's comments about housing and parking needs, as well as it not actually being that accessible to the metro, as it is a very long walk. Third, I'd like to ask a question about whether or not the second floor courtyard will be accessible to residents. In the previous iteration of the plan, it was Melwood space only. Now is the first floor patio Melwood only, and the second floor is available to residents. If it is not, then I'm concerned for the lack of common space and green space for residents. We're concerned that there's not enough buses and that the parking needs to reflect that. Community benefits have not been discussed appropriately with the Civic Association. We took a survey and I'd love to share those results, but I don't have enough time in my comments. We would like the trees in the northeast corner to be moved, especially the tall tree to the back, to preserve it. I also would like to point out that Melwood in 2019 reaffirmed its lease with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on January 29th for parking. Scott Gibson then reaffirmed in 2021 that parking would continue on the site for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints after the development, including access to any parking garage built. As you can see, parking is a huge concern, and we are already over capacity for all the churches and Melwood itself. With that, I believe I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hicks.
Next is Ben Watts, followed by Louise Ott, who is our final speaker. Ben Watts.
Ben,
We'll go
you're
to
off mute. Sorry, just letting him know he's not off mute. I don't think he knows.
Okay, we'll go to Louise Ott next, and then we'll come back to Ben Watts at the end.
Ms. Ott, if you're there, or if you're speaking, we can't hear you. You can try Mr. Watts if you're there. Okay. Well, I think if either one of you have comments, please.
I'm sorry. Just redo the chat. It says they're not able to unmute. Neither of them are able to unmute.
They are welcome to call in. They have unmuting permission, so they're welcome to call in using the information.
Oh, I got it now. I can speak. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Can you hear me?
Great. Go ahead, Mr. Watts.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a longtime resident and live like a couple streets over. And I kind of would align myself with the other people. I think this project is a little too big. I do appreciate the what they do, what Melwood does, and I think they're going to be great neighbors. I feel like the size of this is too large, and I really think it's going to have some serious impacts with deliveries to all the residents and so forth. That I don't think it's really been taken into consideration. Another item I would mention is just noticing lately there's like a lot more traffic on Fern, which is just a couple streets down, and they're going to do, in addition, it's going to get a lot worse with they're going to do Crystal House. They're going to add a whole lot of buildings to Crystal House. It's going to, the density is going to get big, and it's going to be a problematic with the parking. I mean, with the traffic. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Ms. Ott, are you able to unmute?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Great, thank you.
Yes. Hey, thank you, Ben Watts. I agree totally with everything you've said. The project is just too big. I appreciate Melwood's vision and all that, but the project is simply too big. Then Bernie Byrne and your plants is, I agree with you, and I like to align myself with Rob Douglas, the concern about the parking and everything Rachel Hicks also said. Whoops, sorry about that. So that's it. It's just too big, and I'm concerned it's also going to set a precedent going down the road for other building along 23rd Street. We are, we're a residential neighborhood, and we really, 3 stories I think would be okay, but 5 stories is too high. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe those are all of our speakers, Madam Clerk. So with that concludes our meeting. And I guess I declare the Site Plan Review Committee for the Melwood project adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.